You're listening to KVRX HD3 Austin, streaming at koop.org. Radio for people, not for profit. This is Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show. I'm Mike Wheat, and each week on our show, we go beyond the stacks, get to know the people and the programs that make the library a hub of learning, technology, and inspiration for our community. Thanks to the kind folks of Writing on the Air for telling their listeners about our show. As I mentioned today, we are going to have a conversation with Cesar Garza. You may recognize his name from our excerpts of the podcast. He hosts one of the many that we do. But he's going to be on the show today to talk about Austin Public Library's social media ambassadors. And as we like to do, let's start from the beginning. Oh, hello, Cesar.
Hello, Mike. How's it going?
I'm good, man. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Sure, yeah. I'm glad to be here.
You've been featured before, but this is the first time you've ever been live.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So what brought you to Austin?
What brought me to Austin was a job, basically. I think that's why a lot of people end up in Austin as a job. And I had initially lived in the Rio Grande Valley, which is the southern tip of Texas. So that's where I'm from. But I got a job here working for this really cool state agency called the Texas State Library and Archives Commission. And so I moved up for that job, and I worked there for about 2 years. And then I just got the hankering to go back to libraries because that was my career choice initially, to work in libraries. Now working for the state library, I'm still kind of working with libraries, but kind of on the periphery because it's a state agency that supports the libraries and supports the archives of the state. So I just had the hankering to go back to libraries, and so I decided to, and thankfully was allowed to work for the Austin Public Library.
Awesome. Yeah, so when you were there at TSLAC, were you working with Steven Sawinski?
I was not, and TSLAC is the Texas State Library and Archives Commission, for people who don't know. And actually, the story is Stephen is actually the person who succeeded me, who took my place.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. He was just here on our last show.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah.
Speaking of those partnerships,
Yeah, talking about, and I know he took my desk and he took my phone. His title is, or our title was, it's communications officer. That's the official title. It's basically just the PR person, the social media person, the marketing person for the agency, the person who coordinates all of that. So I did that for 2 years, and then I came to the Austin Public Library in 2014. And
nice.
So
what initially inspired you to go the librarian route?
Well, I think a lot of librarians have libraries in their blood and their history to a certain extent. I grew up where I came from the southern tip of the state. I grew up going to my local public library. I was one of those people that just liked going to the library. I felt comfortable there. I liked everything about it. And when I was young and growing up, I guess I never really thought too much about it, but I thought maybe, one day I'll work for a library. And so I went away to college, and then I decided I wanted to be a librarian, and so I had to figure out, how do you become a librarian? And in this country, in general, you have to have a master's degree in library science or information science, and so I decided to go to graduate school, and then I came back home and started working at the public library where I was from. So,
right. And what school did you end up going to?
For graduate school?
Yeah.
It's called the Pratt Institute in New York City.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's the master's degree I got. Yeah.
Were you there in person?
I was there in person because I moved to New York City right after I graduated from college. So I went to college at Yale in Connecticut. And so Connecticut is actually just like 70 miles away from New York City. So I just moved to New York, and I was living in New York, and then I got my master's degree. So
cool. Congratulations.
Well, thanks.
All right. We're going to continue our conversation with Cesar. We'll get into more about what he's here for, the social media ambassadors. But first, we have two of our librarians are going to tell us some of the community groups and activities and events happening at all the Austin Public Library locations across town.
My name is Blair Parsons, and I'm a reference librarian at the Falk Central Library. Thursday, March 16th, the Yarborough Branch Library offers Board with Books. A wide range of modern and traditional board games will be available to play. Attendees are also encouraged to bring their favorite board games for group play. Board with Books is 6:30 to 8:30, Thursday night, March 16th at the Yarborough Branch Library. Also on Thursday, March 16th, the Carver Branch Library will discuss Congressman John Lewis's 3-volume graphic memoir titled March. March is a vivid first-hand account of Mr. Lewis's lifelong struggle for civil and human rights. Badger Dog teaching artist Julie Poole will lead the discussion, which begins at 6:30 p.m. Thursday, March 16th at the Carver Branch Library.
This is Ann Minner, Youth Services Manager and Children's Librarian at the Old Quarry Branch. I get to tell you about something special happening at the Austin Public Library this spring. The Contemporary Austin presents Preschool Art Hour. This special literature-based program features Mike Austin's book Monsters Love Colors and is followed by a drippy art project. This program is recommended for children aged 3 to 5 years. This program is scheduled at several branches this spring. The Pleasant Hill branch on Tuesday, March 21st at 10:15 a.m., the Carver branch on Thursday, March 30th at 10:15 a.m., the Sapeta branch Tuesday, April 4th at 11 a.m., the Old Quarry branch Tuesday, May 2nd at 11 a.m., and the Millwood branch Thursday, May 4th at 3:30 p.m. In other news, story times have started up again this week. Our schedule goes through the end of April. Details on the many baby, toddler, preschool, and all ages story times and programs offered throughout the season are at library.austintexas.gov.
Austin Book Arts Center is a new nonprofit teaching book arts to promote literacy. Our classes include bookbinding, letterpress printing, calligraphy, book repair, and decorative papermaking. More info at atxbookarts.org.
All right, and welcome back to Volumes on Co-op Radio. Again, we're here having a discussion with Cesar Garza, reference librarian from the Folk Central Library. And we're going to talk a bit about the library's social media ambassadors, what that is, what it means. But I'm not done hearing about Cesar.
Okay, all right. I don't know about this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So how are you feeling about the Austin Public Library system compared to where you were?
Well, I used to work for a public library system in the southern tip of Texas called the McAllen Public Library. It was a smaller system. It actually has just one central library and 2 branch libraries. This McAllen Public Library has gained in reputation because it's the building that used to be a Walmart that was converted into a library. And since I've left that place, it's sort of trended a little on social media, or maybe a lot. It's won some architectural awards. So I was working there throughout the building of that and the opening of that new central library in McAllen. And then after they opened it, I got this job in Austin. So I came to Austin, having had that experience already in McAllen. And so now I'm in Austin Public Library. It's a lot bigger. It has the central library, 20 branch libraries, a history center, a recycled reads used bookstore. So it's a lot. It's just, I've kind of leveled up in certain ways, and I can definitely appreciate that. I come into contact with a lot more diverse customers. So it can be challenging in some respects, but then in other respects, it's also a very positive thing because you get to see and talk to people from all walks of life. And to me, that's one of the positive and the things, something that you really take away from being a librarian. So.
Right. There's a consistent view of the people in need,
right,
and what your services are providing.
Right.
So did you headway the efforts of social media from your last employment?
I did for the state library for TSLAC. That was one of my main jobs. Before that in McAllen, I was also the lead social media person. Not formally, but that was part of my job duties. I was a reference librarian at McAllen Public Library, and I also helped with the social media. Here at Austin Public Library, it's the same thing, basically. So
you've been able to see a growth in interest and even support by branching out to our social media.
Yes. Libraries and social media go hand in hand. Just because it's a library, a public library especially, is like a community resource. It's something that a person, it sort of fosters connections between people in person. So that's what social media does online. So there's a natural alignment between those two things. So for here in Austin, Austin Public Library has a pretty active social media presence. When I started working at the Austin Public Library in 2014, it was already active. But internally, amongst the staff, there's a team of librarians, a team of library staff members at Austin Public Library who devote a lot of time and energy into organizing the social media of the library. I'm on that team, and it's through that team that we launched this idea of the social media ambassador. So,
great. And how long have you been launching this ambassador program?
It was launched November of 2015, so it's been over a year, and this year it'll be 2 years. So it's still growing. It's in its infancy, but I think there's a lot of potential to make it something really strong.
Right, and it's open to the public. If people wanted to partake, they're welcome to do so. Where can we check that out?
If there are any library fans out there who wanna check some more information out about the social media ambassadors of the library, they would just go to the library's website, library.austintexas.gov/ambassador. That's library.austintexas.gov/ambassador. They could also on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, if they track the hashtag APL ambassador, that's the program hashtag, you can sort of track, you can go through the timeline of posts from the ambassadors themselves, from the library, about the ambassadors, just to see what it's about. And it's just like it's really just an online group of library supporters who, through the things you normally do through social media, like, shares, retweets, favorites, hearts, likes, reactions, those actions that happen on social media are what we're trying to harness in the service of the library in a positive way. So we're just organizing all that, and we, as the Austin Public Library, we're trying to inspire conversations about the library amongst the social media community, and we do that through email primarily, but we also use our social media platforms to highlight certain aspects of the ambassadors. So.
I assume this also helps remind the public, the users, of their overall involvement with the library. They are part ownership and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, the library is a public resource. It belongs to the community, and so we want the community to partake in what that means. And I do like to emphasize the fact that the goal of the social media ambassadors program is to raise awareness of the library. It's also a goal to raise the library's awareness of the ambassadors, of the library supporters, and social media is a really powerful way to do that. So, yeah.
Have we done any events outside of APL, specifically in this endeavor, as far as trying to meet and greet some of our ambassadors?
We haven't done that yet, but we're planning on it, because what we're waiting for is the big moment in the history of Austin Public Library, which is which is the opening of the new Central Library. We launched the ambassadors program knowing that this new library was going to happen. We did it knowing that we were going to use that new library opening as an opportunity to bring the ambassadors together, or to encourage them to come to the library and share with us on that day, and also in the days and the years to come. So we're going to organize some in-person meetings eventually. And one little, teaser I can give you now is that we are planning to extend an invitation to the social media ambassadors to preview the new Central Library before it opens, so they can have one of the first looks. They can share it on social media, and this is going to happen. But you have to be an ambassador, but it might sound like we're trying to exclude people, but we are absolutely not excluding, because the ambassador, anyone can become an ambassador, and all you're really doing is signing up for an email list. That's
right.
all.
Yeah. So age limits, or do you have any age limits, any requirements?
Technically, formally, we don't have age limits, but at the library, it's usually just adults, really. Like, that's theoretically only really adults can, and maybe teenagers. They can also participate too. But if you're a teenager and you sign up for the email list, it's not like you're going to get kicked out.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm not even quite sure how young you have to be to get an email. So I'm not sure if it's just an email list.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, with the Facebook, whatever, I think you do have to technically be 18.
Okay.
I don't think that stopped my kid since he was 12, so.
Yeah, kids have their ways, right? So.
So your podcast that you run,
Right.
Austin Speaks, you predominantly use as a platform to meet some of your ambassadors.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about that podcast.
Sure, because in the past, you were just asked about any in-person meetings. And I knew even since we launched it that we wouldn't really have any opportunities to meet in person just yet. But I thought that if we could just reach out to them through the email list and say, we would love to just share your story. We would love if the library could borrow basically your story and your voice for the podcasts of the library. So I organized 6 podcasts in which I interviewed individual social media ambassadors from the Austin community. And those podcasts are available to the Austin Public Library podcast, APL volumes. And they out of that came these stories that are really interesting and compelling and positive, and it allows us to see the library through someone else's life in a way that we maybe couldn't have otherwise. So it's really great.
Yeah. There's tons of people who have come to me, and the library wasn't on my radar for whatever reason. Now that I've been going there, I can't imagine life without it, especially now they have children or whatever.
Right.
So this is a very important thing to, like you said, the social media, this reach is about making the connections, the relationships with our customers.
Sure. Yeah. I think that, the great potential of social media is the potential to just foster or just connect with people you just don't normally connect with. And I think that's the great way that we can use it for the library. So.
Right. Because you would expect us APL employees to pat ourselves on the back and talk about all the amazing things that we do, but it really, I feel like, gets some weight when it comes from somebody from outside.
It means more. That's why word of mouth marketing is so powerful. It means more when your friend recommends something rather than just this third person entity that is the Austin Public Library. You know what I mean? So it just means so much more. And we're trying to tap into that and inspire the ambassadors to talk about the library in certain ways. Ultimately, it's up to them how they talk about the library. It's their choice. They can join the list. They can be an ambassador. They cannot. They can opt in. They can opt out. It's totally under their control. All we control as the library is just the messages we give to them in an attempt to inspire them to do certain things for us.
Right. We've reached out physically with all our locations and branches. We try to do it virtually with our
right.
website, et cetera. And now, of course, you can communicate with us, social media, and share ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we're going to listen to an excerpt of a podcast from your series, Austin Speaks. Do you care to give an introduction on this one?
Sure, absolutely. So the excerpt we're going to listen to is by a social media ambassador named Sherry Kleinert. I had a conversation with Sherry on the podcast, and Sherry is an Austin Public Library card holder since she's been a card holder since 1975. So for over 40 years, she's been a supporter of the library. She grew up in Austin. She's an Austin native. She has a very touching story about the connection she had with her grandmother and how her grandmother fostered her love for the library and what it means to her all these years later. And in the excerpt, she's going to talk about not her grandmother. I would hope people can listen to the whole podcast to listen to that story. But the excerpt is going to be Sherry's top 10 reasons for loving the library. And I think people are going to like it.
And so one more time, where can people find your podcast?
Sure. The podcast can be found actually on the website where you sign up to be an ambassador. It's library.austintexas.gov/ambassador.
So these are my top 10 why I love the library. Number one is sustainability. Why buy when you can rent for free? The library obviously has many things available to you to rent. Free movies, need I say more? That's number two. Number three is respite, a cool, quiet place to read a magazine in the summer. Number four is the internet for homework, job applications, and of course Facebook and whatever other social medias folks are on. Number five is albums, and yes, you can still rent vinyl at the library. Number six is maps, all sorts of fascinating reference material at the Austin Public Library. Number seven is children's programs. There's story time, puppet shows, and movies. Number eight is social services, such as language classes, flu shots, and learning labs, and there's also literacy programs. Number nine is online resources. You can stream ebooks, audiobooks, magazines, movies, and music. And number 10, last but not least, is my grandmother. She is the reason that I love the library. Thank you, Nanny. She was a very kind person and offered a lot to me as her granddaughter, and I'm forever grateful for that.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
The next question I have for you, Sherry, is what is it about Austin Public Library that motivated you to support us as a social media ambassador?
Well, my relationship with my grandmother and my history with the library, it because of her love for me, it provided me with access to a world that I would have not otherwise had. And I was thinking about this on the way over, and I think that the library is socially just in a way that the internet isn't. And I bring that up because I think the internet is in some ways taking over the place of libraries. But I think with libraries, everyone has access to it. You don't have to own a computer. You don't know how to work a computer. And I also think that it gives you access to materials that the internet doesn't, only in that the internet, unless you have a specific topic in mind, is really giving you access to what's trending at the moment. So it kind of is providing you with what your interest should be. Whereas you walk into the library, it's just this open, I almost said open book, but this open world that you can, you go and look at one thing and it just leads to something else and to something else. And so I think that reading and having access to the library is important, and it's something that we should protect.
Yeah, I second that. And I'm really taken by the way you described the library as socially just. And it seems to me that a place, a resource, a community center that is socially just it has a natural expression in social media and the ways that you can use social media to, not just promote the library, but promote what it represents, promote what it can do for the community. So we definitely, at Austin Public Library, appreciate social media ambassadors such as yourself who can do that for us.
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
You're listening to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show.
On Co-op 91.7 FM, Hornsby, Austin, radio for people, not for profit.
Looking for fun and entertainment during South by Southwest but don't have a badge or wristband? Austin's two community radio stations, Co-op and KAZI, are joining together to present Community Fest at Kenny Durham's backyard on Friday, March 17th and Saturday, March 18th. This event is open to the public and features 2 days of music, performances, food, and fun for the whole family. Community Fest starts at noon each day and ends at midnight. Community Fest is presented by Co-op and KAZI, bringing unity to the community. More information can be found at coop.org.
And welcome back to Volumes on Co-op Radio. I'm Mike Wheat, and we've been here speaking with Cesar Garza about the Social Ambassador Campaign. And then we got to hear, just before that last break, an excerpt from the podcast he hosts, Austin Speaks, where APL Social Ambassador Sherry Kleinart gave us her top 10 reasons for loving the library. And more information about the Social Media Ambassador Campaign and the podcasts can all be found at library.austintexas.gov/social.
That's right.
And now, for a little surprise, I've got an extra guest today. I would like to introduce everybody to our surprise guest, Michael Harley. He is Children's Program Specialist at the Falk Central Library. Hey, Michael.
Hi, surprise Michael Harley is the best kind of Michael Harley.
Ain't no surprise like a Michael Harley surprise. So, man, where are you from?
That's the long story that could take up the whole time we have, but I'll shorten it and say I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Technically Corrales, just outside of Albuquerque.
So you didn't take the wrong turn at Albuquerque?
I did not.
And you are a youth librarian by degree?
Well, not by degree, actually.
I'll expand on that.
I do not have my master's in library services yet. That is something I'm hoping to do through being here and with APL. I was able to be a librarian level 1 actually back in New Mexico because you only need a certification there to do that, which I was able to get because I was in libraries as a volunteer for about 12 years with the Corrales Community Library. Shout out to Edwina Tafoya, the children's librarian there.
And 12 years as a volunteer?
Yes, 12 years as a volunteer.
Man, that is dedication.
Yes, well, it was a great space that Edwina made at that library, and I couldn't help but keep going back, and she snagged me into library services.
I guess that got to, give you some credit towards experience on the job.
Absolutely. I thought the whole time that I was going to be a voice actor, not a librarian.
So you are a youth librarian at the Falk Central Library.
Yes.
And so far, the only male youth librarian we've been able to speak with on the show. Yeah. Congratulations on that.
Go me.
Yeah. So what's it like for you over at Central? What's a day like?
A day is wonderful. actually. I love working at the Central Library. I have a wonderful team of librarians that I work with. I work closely with Kathleen, our supervisor for teen services, as well as Susan and Jessica and Melissa, our wonderful children's librarians. I get to plan out programming. We're gearing up for a new Central Library. This week we've been doing spring break crafternoon programming, which has been wonderful. We made a bunch of buttons today. I think I made more buttons than the children did.
I get carried away with that machine as well.
It's wonderful.
It's so much fun. And I noticed a rogue button all the way up on our 4th floor of the Stinky Cheese Man. And
yeah, I still don't know who did it.
I don't either. I wanted to take it, but I thought the world needs to see it still. So I left it alone. And so let me ask each of you guys here. We still have Caesar here with us as well. As librarians, we've got to ask you, do you have any recommendations for books, media? Caesar, let's start with you. What are you reading right now?
Well, I always like to remind people that the library is more than books. And so I would like to recommend the music, the albums, the everything of this band called Bon Iver, which is the lead singer.
Vernon.
Justin Vernon is the lead singer. I'm currently obsessed with his music. His latest album is 22 A Million. And the best track on there is called 8 Circle. And I think the reason I like him a lot is just because Bon Iver is one of those artists who sounds great on the recording, the the studio recording, but he sounds even better live. So I recommend you look up some of his live concerts for 22 A Million, specifically 8 Circle, and prepare to have your mind blown. That's great.
And I'll recommend, he's not one to be seen at a music festival.
Right, yeah.
He kind of gets drowned out from the bassy stages.
Yeah, I can see that. I've seen on YouTube, there are a lot of concerts of his performances in a little more in smaller settings, but he does have this big festival that happens every year. So
cool. Well, Michael, what about you? What are you reading, listening to, watching? What do you want to share?
I just read an incredible teen fiction called The Lie Tree by Lisa Harding. It was amazing.
As in the fib tree?
Yes. Oh. She has to tell the tree lies to get it to grow fruit. It's pretty creepy stuff. And listening to every day when I'm riding the bus to work, I cannot stop listening to the soundtrack from La La Land. It is ridiculously addictive. So
I still have not seen that movie.
It's beautiful. That opening scene is just mind-blowing. So
wow.
Oh man, that's great. I guess it's only fair if I give one, right?
Please do.
Yes.
Gosh, we just had the vinyl showdown last week, so I've really been listening to a lot of old soul and R&B from the Carver branch.
Right.
But the one series that really stuck out to me is this Atlantic Rhythm and Blues Collection, volumes 1 through 7. When I checked that out, there were holds on it. I was able to check it out immediately. Yeah. But between the time I checked it out and we started promoting our little show last week, that whole series has holds on it already. So the secret's out. People are going to start grabbing that up.
I think they should. Last week you talked about the vinyl at the library, right? A lot of people don't.
Yeah, that's where I got it.
Yeah,
and
realize.
Now the word is out. People are going to be checking out that vinyl. So.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I think that's going to wrap it up for today. Again, thanks to Caesar Garza and Michael Harley for joining us today. Next week, we'll have Jennifer Connor and Patty Fowler on the show. Jennifer's going to talk about Night Crafters, and Patty would like to talk about the best books of 2016 and 2017 so far. Additional information about the Austin Public Library can be found at library.austintexas.gov. My thanks to Seb Corson and to DJ Harris. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show. Details at library.austintexas.gov/volumes.
I want to give a special thanks to our audio engineer, DJ Harris, and our volunteer production assistant, Sev Corson.
And thanks to the musicians who composed and performed our original theme song. Andrew Noble on violin, Kirk Duvall on guitar, and APL's very own Mike Wheat on percussion.
Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show, airs Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on KOOP.org Community Radio.